look at where this all began, the 9th of August, where Michael Brown was shot by a police officer.
On the 9th of August, midday, Michael Brown was walking down the middle of the street in Ferguson with a friend. Police car came up behind him, said, "Move over to the sidewalk, don't block the road." An altercation followed, and then what happened next is still, I think, it will forever be a subject of controversy. It ended up with Michael Brown being shot in the top of the head twice, a double tap, kill shots, and it immediately sparked anger in the Ferguson, Missouri community.
Yeah, we saw the protests starting that very same day. Crowds gathering. The protests themselves escalated on the 10th of August, and we saw 32 arrests, 2 officers injured. That was in Ferguson, Missouri.
Well, very quickly, for whatever reason, the authorities, and remember, Ferguson is a suburb, a near suburb of St. Louis, but I believe it's included in St. Louis County. And, who was in charge of policing what was clearly going to be, several days of anger when a young man is shot in broad daylight in very, very unclear circumstances? There's bound to be trouble in the middle of summer. In addition, the police department would not even release the name of the officer who had done the shooting.
And those protests started to spread.
They spread around Ferguson and became more intense. But you also saw offshoot demonstrations around the country. Young black people feel that they are constantly being targeted by the police, and when one of their own gets killed in this way, it's bound to produce all kinds of anger, and the anger built and built, and finally the president, who was, I believe, on vacation in Martha's Vineyard, finally had to address the nation about this.
Yeah, and he called for calm. Let's have a listen.
There is never an excuse for violence against police or for those who would use this tragedy as a cover for vandalism or looting. There's also no excuse for police to use excessive force against peaceful protests or to throw protesters in jail for lawfully exercising their First Amendment rights. And here in the United States of America, police should not be bullying or arresting journalists who are just trying to do their jobs.
And Michael, as you were saying, the officer involved in this hadn't been named for some time. He was eventually named as Officer Darren Wilson.
We didn't know what he looked like, actually, until today, when all of the testimony that was before the grand jury was released. This is Darren Wilson. It's a photo that I think will just add more fuel to the fire. He claimed in his testimony released today that he was being violently assaulted by Michael Brown.
And this photograph
is supposed to show bruising to his face. But, there's no lacerations, there's no blood. And I think that people looking at it might say, well, this was not a reason to use deadly force.
And this wasn't released until today, but what was released was video of Michael Brown allegedly robbing a store.
A convenience store, just before he was stopped by Officer Wilson. Allegedly, he shoplifted a pack of cigarillos, small cigars. And at the time, the community said, well, look, they're just trying to traduce the name of this poor young man who was innocently shot by a policeman. And this will also be something that's never really clearly resolved now.
Yeah, 16th of August, the following day, we saw a state of emergency declared. A curfew was set, but there were many breaking that curfew, as we can see.
This is a full week after the shooting. The rioting is still going on. If anything, it's growing. And who's in charge of policing it became more and more a question of controversy also.
Yeah, we saw the National Guard deployed. Yeah.
And
20th of August, the St. Louis grand jury hearing begins. Yeah. We've had that verdict today, so we can see how long that process has taken.
And this is most unusual. Usually what happens with a grand jury is the district attorney, in this case the St. Louis district attorney, St. Louis County District Attorney McCulloch, usually what he'll do is he'll go and say, this is the charge I would like to bring in this case. All you have to decide is whether there's reasonable amount of evidence that I could prosecute this case in front of a normal jury. Instead, we've had months and months and months, thousands of pages of testimony, much of it conflicting. It was like a real trial. And nor did he present them with a single charge against Officer Wilson. He gave them 4 choices, and what happened was, I think people got lost.
OK, and let's just finally, through 17th of November, predicting that there was going to be these riots in reaction to the grand jury decision. That came today, and Officer Wilson was not indicted. No probable cause exists to file any charge against him. Michael Goldfarb, thanks very much indeed.